Okay, so then we move into discussion, possible action on matters emanating from executive session. And could I have a motion to approve the stipulated agreement number 1 that was discussed in executive session?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Jim and a second by Marilyn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. Could I then have a motion to approve the stipulated agreement number 2 that was discussed in the executive session?
Second.
We have a motion by Ethel and a second by Mr. McCool. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. Could I then have a motion to approve the stipulated agreement number 3 that was discussed in an executive session?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Mikowski and a second by Ms. O'Donnell. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. We'll then move into public comment. If anyone has any public comment, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. As a reminder, members of the public are allotted 3 minutes each to speak. And if anyone has comment, please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Galuzzi. I live on Celentano Drive here in Naugatuck. I'm a mom of 2 kids in Naugatuck school system, and I'm here tonight to speak about the code of conduct at our board meetings. I have a special needs child in Maple Hill, and I'm used to having to advocate for her and her needs, whether it be in school or in life. I don't always agree with the school assessments or with her team, but I know that we can come together and share our opinions in a safe space, free of retribution and retaliation. This makes me comfortable coming to my kids' teams and expressing my concerns and opinions. We can truly come together and make a difference for my child because of this. And I'm grateful that her team at Maple Hill has provided that and for all the hard work and effort they put into making that possible. I'm a big believer in that differences need to be celebrated and that everyone has a right to be heard and speak and that everyone should be treated with respect. We teach our kids from a young age the 5 Bs. Be peaceful, be safe, be kind, be cooperative, and be respectful. These are the 5 building blocks that my kids have been taught at our schools for how they should conduct themselves and treat others. As adults, it shouldn't be any different. At the last Board of Ed meeting, I was so upset that I had to leave early. Leave because I agreed or disagreed with the topics being discussed. I left because I couldn't sit here and watch the people who work so hard every day to support our kids be treated so disrespectfully. They were verbally attacked over and over, and it wasn't what was being said or being asked, but how. From an outsider watching, I was so disturbed. I sat in the front row and watched as one of our elected officials bullied, disrespected, and attacked our intermediate principals. I watched as this member spoke disrespectfully to our superintendent, our student representatives, and fellow board members. This was with the children present, and while the entire community was watching from this room or on YouTube. The great thing about our board is that you've always been able to come together and have conversations and discuss and disagree while still being civil and setting a good example for our children and community. The passion for your cause or viewpoint should never cloud your judgment so much that you allow yourself to become disrespectful, because at that point, your cause and what you're trying to accomplish gets lost and hidden by your behavior. I love that we have Board of Ed members who are very passionate about our kids, but if you want people to listen to you and work with you and feel safe coming to share their opinions and viewpoints, then you need to create that safe and all-inclusive environment by always remaining respectful. You catch more flies with honey. It's that simple. We need to do better. We need to set a better example for our children and the community. I ask that the board review the code of conduct to ensure the behavior does not continue, and also that the board consider a social media policy. We are our best selves when we work together.
Thank you. If there's any other public comment, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, can you hear me? Oh, okay. Good evening. I'm James Higgins. Address is 67 Michael Lane. And last month, I stood before the board and offered to be a part of the solution for our bullying efforts that we are experiencing over at the middle school. And I am standing here today to give kind of an update on what I experienced over the last 30 days. I had multiple members of the board reach out to me, as well as participated in a town hall meeting that happened over at City Hill Middle School, put on by Principal Mezzo, where she specifically focused her discussions on the harassment, bullying issue, relational aggression that we're all seeing and experiencing. Immediately following that presentation, there was a workshop that was opened up to anyone who would like to who wanted to attend it, and I would say there was approximately 20, maybe 22 individuals present at the time. We had some really valuable discussions, and from what I understand, Mrs. Mezzo and the team has created a unified front and has been able to be, from what I'm experiencing, a lot of positive results. My student who's over there, I have not had one phone call home about any negative reports where he was involved in, whatever that's going on in the hallways, and it's been really positive. So I wanted to give an update and make sure that my compliments go out to the efforts. I know it is a tough time for all of our teachers and all of our principals and our administrative staff and the security officers who are walking the halls and doing what they're doing every day and protecting our students. And it was pretty much a 180-degree turn from last month to this month, and it should be known and it should be said. And I'm very proud of the efforts that have come through all the way around. And then finally, I just want to compliment that the communication that I'm experiencing with the principals, and we had a joke last time. I said I got anywhere from 5 to 8 kids as a foster parent. That's a true statement, depending on how many kids I can have under my care at one time. And a lot of the students do attend the schools here. I have Parent Square. I'm sure most of us do. And the communication that comes from that is great. So please keep it up. And I just wanted to extend my compliments and provide an update I've experienced so far. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. Mary Noon, 10 Cardinal Lane. I wanted to address a concern that I had that came up at the last meeting. First, I'll start out with a little background on myself. I'm a paraeducator in the district and the president of the Maple Hill and Cross Street PTOs. While I'm always a mother first, I am always conscious of the way that I conduct myself in person and on social media because I represent our schools and school communities. With that being said, I was appalled by the manner that someone who represents all of the children in our district conducted themselves. I have been to several Board of Ed meetings over the past 7 years, and never once have I worried about my children being here or watching them. My children wanted to watch the last meeting to see what the decision on masks would be, and I found myself answering questions like, why is that person being mean to the other people up there? I used it as a teachable moment, which I usually do, and taught them or spoke to them about how respect and the way that we conduct ourselves. As a parent, what set me over the edge was the way that our amazing high school reps were spoken to when they tried to speak at the end of the meeting. These are the children that you as a board are representing. I implore the board to do some self-reflection and remember that you are not only representing a handful of students, but the entire student body, whether you agree with their views or not. I was also upset by the way that the principals from Cross Street and Hillside were treated. As a parent with a child at Cross Street, I can tell you that Ms. Stiedelbaum and her staff are doing an absolutely amazing job, and my child is thriving there. While academics are very important to me for my children, overall standardized test scores are not my top priority. These children have been through so much during this pandemic, and I am so happy that our district is focusing on social emotional learning. I spoke with several parents and staff members who would have liked to come and speak tonight, but they were afraid of confrontation and backlash. As a board, please be mindful of the community that you represent and be respectful. Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone has any other public comment, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. One last call for public comment. Seeing none, we'll move into the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, yes, please. Ms. Rolla is going to share a presentation. Right now, our Early Childhood Center is in the process of getting accredited. I asked Ms. Rolla to share with the board an update in regards to their NIAC, journey. And I want to thank everyone here. There's a host of support from the ECC. Ms. Rolla, you must be doing something right. What a wonderful crowd and support team that you brought with you today. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you so much to the board for allowing me this opportunity to share our NIAC reaccreditation journey. And thank you very much to the team for coming out to support tonight. So first, I just want to share what is NIAC. So NIAC, or the National Association for the Education of Young Children, is a rigorous and transformative quality improvement process. So the Early Childhood Center became NIAC accredited for the first time in September 2017. And really the purpose of this accreditation is just validation that the ECC is providing high quality instruction and support for the children and families that we serve. And really we know that early childhood is the foundation of the future educational journey of the students in Naugatuck. So we take this very seriously. Like any good journey, there's some barriers that we faced. So for a variety of reasons, this was a very quick timeline. Typically, when you're going through NIAC reaccreditation, you have years. We had 4 to 8 months. So that was the first really difficult thing that our team had to process. We also had new staff members. So about half of our staff was new to this, including myself, and had never gone through this process before. So was a big learning curve for us. All of the standards that we were working from, that I'll talk more about in the next slide, were new. So unfortunately, we couldn't look back at the previous accreditation standards and use those to further our work because it was all different. And then finally, this has been spoken about many times, but just the demands of the pandemic that were really causing a lot of stress in our schools and for our teachers. So just kind of added another thing. But we also had a lot of advantages. So as you can see with the staff that's here, our school community is extremely collaborative. So the first time that the ECC went through accreditation, teachers worked in isolation. This time we switched that up and we really did this as a team and worked together, and we found that was really successful. We also had veteran staff members who truly championed this work, and they were the foundation of all that we did. A lot of professional learning opportunities were offered through the state. They knew this is a tough process, so we took advantage of those. Specifically, our leadership team and our educational consultant did that. And then finally, a growth mindset. I think it could have been easy for our team to just think, oh, this is a huge challenge for us. But we tried to face this as this is a great opportunity to show the work that we do at the ECC. This shows a timeline of how we prepared for this process. So because we had such a short timeline, we had to be really intentional with how we did our work. So the first thing we did was we did a whole school deep dive into the standards. Because they were new, we had to really define what NIAC was looking for. So when they come, they're going to dig into a portfolio where they ask us to really show our work in 354 different items. And when they say show our work, it's through either pictures, descriptions, or policies. So it's not just kind of a quick checkbox. It's a very descriptive item and takes a lot of work. So we had to make sure we understood what NIAC was asking for. Then I was able to apply and got a grant for a coach, a quality improvement coach from the state, and she's been extremely helpful. In September and October, we started working together on our program and classroom portfolios. So any free minute teachers had, which they don't have a lot, we know, they were really digging in and working on those together. October and December, we edited those portfolios and really looked them over with a fine-tooth comb and made sure that we had exactly what NIAC needed. I asked teachers to then self-score themselves on the class tool, which is the feedback tool that the assessor will be looking for when she comes to our school to see what she's looking for in the classroom. So teachers really identified areas for growth. And then in January, myself and the leadership team did classroom observations and gave intentional feedback using this tool. Our coach did that as well, doing walkthroughs and really looked to see what our classroom climate looked like. In February, we did a whole school PD, learning on frequently missed items and what to expect during our site visit. It gave time for us to process as the team how we're feeling, what we need to do, and kind of pinpoint those last minute items. in March, we had our final coach visit, and then starting tomorrow, any day now, our assessor will come up until April 1st. So quickly, I just kind of wanted to show everyone what the standards look like. So the first standard is relationships. So that's 42 assessment items. And really what NIAC is looking for is how our program builds relationships with all its stakeholders. So for us, something to highlight is we just have a strong commitment to creating a positive school community that's really driven by our charter, our staff charter, our classroom charters, how people want to feel when they're in our building and how they're going to get there. Standard 2 is curriculum. That's much more comprehensive. It's 115 items. And for us, in addition to curriculum aligned to state standards, our lessons are really tailored to student interest and designed to expose students to real-world experiences. So in this picture that I shows, students in this classroom last year were super interested in the bug study. Not my favorite study, but they loved it. So the teacher, one of our staff members actually has a beehive in her home, and she was able to bring in a honeycomb, a beekeeper suit, and really expose the children to those experiences. So that's just something we wanted to highlight for NIAC when they came. Standard 3 is teaching. That's 49 items. And for us, the district equity work has truly been really embedded in all of our learning experience. We do that through the incorporation of diverse text, classroom materials, labeling all items in our classrooms with all the languages that children in those classrooms speak, and really being culturally responsive to families in our community. Standard 4 is assessment of child progress. That's 19 items. And students are assessed on all learning domains 3 times a year through evidence-based screeners, and we provide intervention based on the screener results. Standard 5 is health. That's 31 items, and our school nurse really goes above and beyond the daily demands that a school nurse faces each day and connects families to community health resources, such as dental and medical providers. She also was able to offer health presentations for families on nutrition and oral hygiene. Standard 6 is staff competencies, preparation, and support. That's 39 items, and for us, in addition to really supporting staff socially and emotionally, we also have incorporated planning time and teacher professional learning and collaboration for them so they're able to really work together and learn from each other. And also something important to me was a mentor program to support new teachers. A few weeks ago, we had a new teacher dinner. That was really nice. So they could be a cohort, create a cohort together. Standard 7 is families. We know that a parent is a child's first teacher. That's something that we say all the time at the ECC. So family partnership is at the core of all that we do through different family events, creating family goals with them when a child enters our building, and that doesn't end when they leave our building either. Standard 8 is community relationships. That's 9 items. School collaborates frequently with community resources and agencies in Naugatuck, and we're very grateful that the community is so willing to help us with that. And in this picture, that child's dream was to be a firefighter. So people from the Naugatuck Fire Department came in and they met him and made his dream come true, which was wonderful. Standard 9 is physical environment. That's 8 items. Just our building is a very nice layout in our building. We're very grateful for that. Our classrooms have well-defined learning areas, but we also have increased the use of outdoor space and created learning experiences beyond the classroom. Standard 10 is leadership and management. That's 31 items, and it really speaks to the policies that we have in place in our building. And thanks to our strong partnership with special services and district leadership, we have a strong cohesion with that and feel very fortunate about that. So our site visit, our assessor will come for a full day. So she'll be with us from 7:30 to 4:30 anytime before April 1st. So any day now. 4 classrooms will be chosen at random to be observed for 1 hour each. The portfolio review, so all those items, those 354 items I discussed, that will be reviewed over 2 hours. The climate of the building will be assessed through morning and afternoon walkthroughs. And then within 12 weeks of the visit, we will have our decision. I wanted to just end with a quote. We see how early childhood experiences are so important to lifelong outcomes, how the early environment literally becomes embedded in the brain and changes its architecture. At the ECC, we take very seriously the privilege we have of teaching our youngest learners in Naugatuck, and I'm hopeful that I come back in a few months and have good news about our visit. Any questions?
Mrs. Roth, I want to thank you. NIAC accreditation is a huge lift, a ton of work. I want to thank you for your leadership and your team, the collaborative approach. And I can tell you right now that climate at the ECC is amazing. You feel it, you feel everything that you do, you feel the love for the children and the joy that you bring to them every day. Thank you and your team.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask our DEI director, Mrs. Teresa Rango. We were very fortunate. A lot of folks, thank you. Yeah. Come on up to the podium. We were very fortunate to hire Mrs. Rango, who started really right before the start of the school year. It's been a while since she's spoken to you. She created, as you know, at the very beginning, had an entry plan that those of you at least who were on the interview committee, we took a look at, we evaluated it, and I asked her today to share with the board an update in regards to her entry plan. The entry plan is posted in board docs, and she'll now present and provide an update as to the work thus far. Mrs. Rango, please.
Thank you, board, and good evening, everyone. Super excited to be here before you this evening. And so I'm going to kind of guide you through where we are in terms of my entry plan. I should also thank, I know I see some members of the townwide DEI committee here as well, so thank you all for joining. So dive right in. So I want to start us off as I kind of guide us through the work being done in Naugatuck for diversity, equity, inclusion, right from the start with some definitions. I know that there are lots of different ways to interpret some of these words, and they've been used in lots of different ways. So I want to be really clear and deliberate about what I mean when I'm using the words and how it's interpreted in the work that I do here within the district. So diversity really is referring to anything that makes us different, right? So it's when I talk about diversity, I'm not just referring to race. I'm referring to socioeconomic status. I'm referring to ability level, anything that can make us different, unique, and of course precious as individuals. So diversity is the first part of the job description in the job that I do, but it's also but I feel like in a lot of ways the heart of this, right? It's just making sure that we have every single person accounted for. And so to spotlight this is racial diversity, this part on the bottom here for you. I want to kind of give you some numbers. So in the borough of Naugatuck right now, well, I should say this is from the data from Data Haven that was compiled for the 2021 report that they filed, which is linked into that document. But right now, the borough of Naugatuck is 68% white. I can't even read, these numbers are so tiny. I guess you guys can see.
Well, can I jump in? 15%.
Thank you. I'm like, I can't see
Hispanic.
from this angle.
Well, I feel like I should be standing up there with you anyway, in that equity is, and this whole notion of all is all of our jobs anyway, right? It's not, and I had this conversation with you, is that you'll likely be presenting with lots of different departments, as we move forward, since things are so intertwined and embedded. 15% Hispanic, 7% Black, 7% other, and 2% Asian. And that's linked to Data Haven, which is comes from data from the census, right?
Yes.
So the other data, which you see, it's the BOE, it's the makeup of our schools. This comes from, well, a spreadsheet that I created from PSIS, which is when we upload, I like my spreadsheets, when we upload our data every year in October to the state of Connecticut based on information that we have from Power School. So our information is, well, we're 50% white and we're 50% non-white. So you're not going to get much more diverse than that. We're 50% white, 31.5% Hispanic, 10% Black, 5% other, and 5.5% other, and 3% Asian. So just so you're aware of, in regards to diversity and race, that's our composition for now.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your printed out copy, because my printed out copy is teeny tiny. I doubted the light in here. So for equity, when we're thinking about equity is really all about everybody having what they actually need, right? So every single person, every single child getting what they need. And I reference person on purpose because when we think about doing work with equity, it's not just about the children that we work with, it's also about the adults that are caring for them. It's important that we know what every child needs to be successful. It's important that we know what every adult needs, what every classroom teacher, every paraprofessional, every principal. What is it that they need to do their best to work? And kind of like in the medical model, if I go to the doctors and go get what I need to make me healthy, we want the equal outcome of having good health. But how I get there, the doctor's going to give me something different. And then when you come after me, you definitely don't want them giving you the same medication they gave me. You want them to look at you. You want them to gauge what you need to be healthy. And you want them to give the medicine that works for you and that's going to bring you to the equal outcome of being healthy. And so that's really what we're talking about. We're thinking about equity, every person getting what they need so that they can be successful. And inclusion is really about access. And now that we have this diverse group of people together and around the table, how do we make sure that we are actually accounting for every single person's voice and that we honor each person's voice in making the decision? So not as an after effect, but in that moment. Within the special education world, they have this really great saying that I absolutely love, not for me, without me, right? So it really is encompassing that idea that we don't make decisions for people without having them around the table and a part of the decisions that are being made. A clicker, sorry. Please, no. So I'm going to kind of update you on these 5 pieces. I'm going to start with core beliefs, and to be clear, they're my core beliefs in doing this work, and I think that's really important that as a person who's been charged with doing this work, that I'm very clear and upfront about that. As was said in the beginning, this is my entry plan, so I literally walked in the door with these are my core beliefs and how this work should be done. I know. You're so good. And I don't want to read everything for you, but I'll start at the top. Every student deserves to be taught by a caring adult who sees them as unique, talented, and capable. I can't stress this enough. Not having high expectations for our students not only cheats ourselves as being able to teach what we need to teach, but it cheats every single child for them reaching their capabilities and what they're capable of doing and what they can accomplish. So every single adult who interacts with students really needs to understand that, believe that, and have that at the core of who they are as educators in Naugatuck Public Schools. I'm going to skip down to a piece about social emotional learning. It is the foundation of equity work. I cannot expect you to learn how to be empathetic with others if you have not done the work of understanding your own emotions, being able to interpret those emotions and manage your emotions, right? So if you're not feeling well, how do you get yourself to a point where you're feeling well? And then you can, once you've managed yourself, you can learn to empathize with others. You can then grow your influence with more people. So that, like, if you think about the CASEL standards, it's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and then making responsible decisions, right? And so when thinking about that, I want to make sure that I have some hardcore data and evidence for you, some research-based information. So I do have and I do have copies of it if anybody in the board is interested. But I'm just going to read you a statement from a study done by the Asthma Institute, which is leading in the field of research. And it says, there is now a strong body of evidence from large-scale experimental studies showing that high-quality preschool and school-based programming focused on social-emotional development make a positive difference for children's academic achievement and behavior. Moreover, during the past 30 years, demand in the labor market for individuals who possess this body of skills has increased. To date, we've learned that in addition to broad improvements in social and behavioral and mental health outcomes, programming and social emotional learning across the school years drives increases in executive functioning, self-efficacy, persistence, pro-social behavior, grades, and scores on standardized tests. Children with stronger social and emotional competencies are also more likely to enter and graduate from college, succeed in their careers, have positive work and family relationships, better mental health and physical health, reduce criminal behavior, and become engaged citizens. In short, it's exactly what we've said our portrait of a graduate is. All of those skills combined with social emotional learning is what builds that portrait of a graduate. So I don't just think that the research is great on this. I have to tell you that I come to Naugatuck as a former principal of a school in Norwalk that actually changed the lives of hundreds of children through work done with social emotional learning. Again, going back to this idea that I believe that social emotional learning is the foundation for equity work. We had 78% of students who were free and reduced lunch. There's not a school in Naugatuck that has those numbers. We were a Category 1 school, a Blue Ribbon school, a state, and a national school of character. We started this work of changing students and changing lives by becoming really adept at honoring social emotional learning, not just for our students, but for our staff. We closed gaps. We brought equity to life through our work with social emotional learning. And so I implore the board to really embrace this concept as a tool for getting what we all want. Like we want our kids to be well adjusted. We also, of course, want our scores to be better, right? And so it actually does. They're very well married. Students don't learn if they're not feeling safe. I highlighted in the first slide the racial, the equity, or the diversity in our school systems, the racial diversity in our school systems, for a reason. All the research says that when you have teachers of color, teachers who look like their students, that students perform better. The other thing that research says is that all students do better when there's diversity in your schools. All students. It rises, all ships rise, right? And so it's a really important part of the work that I do as the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion is going out, recruiting, also retaining our staff, because at the end of the day, we want all of our students to succeed. We want all of our students to do better. And you can go to the next one, sorry. So again, a big part of my job is connecting with the community. I've spent a lot of time, I've lived in Naugatuck for the last 12 years, but to be honest with you, I have not spent very much time in this community. And I'll be honest, because I'm always honest, it's kind of been by choice. It hasn't necessarily been the most comfortable community as a person of color to kind of get to know people and to break down some of the walls. I made the very deliberate choice after finding success in my previous position to do what I can to support this district where I live, where my children attended school, and I have a new grandbaby, so where my grandbaby will hopefully as well. You know, it's time that we make sure that we match the work that we're doing with our curriculum. There's been a lot of phenomenal work happening with our curriculum, but it's time we match that with our social emotional learning and we create environments where students can soar and be successful. And I want very much to be a part of that. So part of my job has been really to embrace the community, get out there, meet people. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know where many of the community organizations were, but I have since really got involved, talked to people, participated in things, and I feel like more of a part of this community. And in the 12 years that I've been here, I now feel like a part of this community. But it took effort, it took a desire to actually make that happen, and we need to now encourage our families to join in doing that. And you do that with an open invitation, and I believe I received an open invitation when I took this position. It invited me in to do the work to get to know the people in this community. So I'm extremely proud to be here. So in my time, I have done 22 focus groups. I've met with parents at each school. I've met with students. I'm still in the process, by the way, of meeting with students. I meet with them a lot, but formally for focus groups. I've met with teachers. I've met with all the administrators in the district. The other piece of my work is to try to find ways to build new relationships and new connections. So I have embarked on a couple of interesting journeys. I walked in already a member of the School of Education Advisory Board for the Western Connecticut State University. It's where I received my undergraduate and master's degree, and I have partnered with them, but in a position as a principal that didn't allow me to be able to use that connection to help support a district. Now I can do that. I'm now on the board of visitors for Sacred Heart University Farrington School of Education, and the new Connecticut Farm to School Institute that is starting. The goal for all of these is to have an opportunity to talk about Naugatuck, talk about the changes that we're looking to make, and invite people in to be educators and to join the work that we're doing here in Naugatuck to become the most inclusive community in Connecticut. It's my goal. The other piece of my work, is working to help support the townwide DEI committee. So I provide them with training. There are 5 subcommittees that are listed there: education, law enforcement, community engagement, town governance, and health and wellness. My role is really as liaison between that committee and the bodies that they are attached to. Sorry, yeah, thank you. So teaching and learning. I'm an educator to my very core. I'm also very much a person who loves to use data to drive all plans and instructions. And I have to tell you that the pandemic has not been our friend when it comes to this topic, because we don't have data that's comparable, that, you know, it's not apples to apples. And no matter which way I slice and dice it, there's no way for me to look at the data that we currently have to draw any concrete conclusions about who are we helping, who is not being helped the way they need to be helped, and then what do we then do about it. We are looking forward to this. You can go to the next one. Sorry. I'm sorry, I forgot to give you your points. We're looking forward to, this is going to be our baseline year, but at least this baseline year, I can go back and I can compare to those 2018, 2019 scores, which was the last time that we had a normal year, if you can all believe that. It sounds insane to say that, reporting year. The other thing that I've been spending a lot of time doing is reviewing curriculum with Caroline, our curriculum director. And it's been a great process to kind of talk about and explore how we can do our job of making sure that what we teach is inclusive of all. We know that the pandemic has set us behind. I don't need the data to know that. It's very clear. It set us behind social emotionally with students. It's also set us behind academically. And we can't wait for the new data to start doing something about it. So we've already, as a district, started using the acceleration model, which basically allows us to kind of approach students where they are and push them forward, rather than trying to remediate, which usually keeps students kind of in traction, not making forward momentum, which students cannot afford. We need them to be successful. So it's our attempt that's already been started to help try to close those gaps. You're doing so good, Mrs. Cooney. Okay, so if you can't tell already, I am definitely a huge fan of culture and climate. It drives the success of any building. Minus that culture and climate, we're really not going anywhere. So the district has already embarked on several tools and instruments that are going to help get us where we'd like to see ourselves be. Important for that, of course, is more. I'm always looking for data. Is the climate survey data. So when you get your surveys home, please, everyone, make sure you fill out your surveys. They're really important to so that we can plan for how you're actually feeling and not what we think. The staff has already developed, long before I got here, the staff was already engaged in and dedicated to the work of equity and diversity, and making sure that when we teach our children, that we are looking at who they really are. And so that starts with really understanding bias and knowing that every single person in this room has biases, and that those biases influence how we do the work that we do, right? And so it was one of the things that also drew me to this district, because I didn't want to go someplace that was just going to do this because something horrible happened, right? And the whole world, our whole country was reacting to the murder of George Floyd, right? And so I didn't want to join a community that was only interested in doing this work because everybody else was doing it. So for me, it was really important that this work had already started before I got here, because it said that you already had a commitment. And I did not want to spend my time someplace where that commitment wasn't solid. And so the fact that the staff has already had 3+ years of work in this matters a lot, because it gives us, again, the foundation. I'll also, again, refer back to the data we talked about with the diversity when it talks about students, our student diversity. 50% of our students in our schools are non-white. 5% of our staff is non-white. That is a huge gap. And if we're going to have people understand and be able to connect, then we have to put some real effort towards that. And cultural responsive teaching and learning, and teachers taking the time to get to know their students as individuals becomes even more important when you don't have things in common, or enough things in common sometimes, when there are some differences. So it became really important that the district was already looking at this work, and that they were already pushing to make sure that our students feel more comfortable, and that they're being taught by people who care enough to learn about them as individuals. Another part of my job is to do, as I said before, recruitment, which we're going to be well in the swing of going to recruitment fairs, and looking to build a staff that more closely mirrors our student population, as well as people who just understand how important it is to be responsive to the students who are in front of you. We just started training for restorative practices, which is, again, another important tool, so that when we talk, when things happen with students, we don't forget that we're an institution of education. We're still teaching. It doesn't mean there aren't consequences. Don't freak out. There are still consequences. But you also still need to repair the relationships, because, again, a school community is a community, right? And you have to be able to talk about what's happened, and you have to be able to make it right. And the last thing that is already, as we heard from the preschool Working Strong and Proud, is that Naugatuck is a district-wide ruler program district, which has been instrumental in making sure that we start students with understanding how they're feeling and how they want to feel, and how getting them to close those gaps to getting there. All right, so next steps for me. I am busy doing my student focus groups. I have to tell you, if you think they're not paying attention, they are. If you think that you're keeping things from them, you aren't. They are observant, they are passionate, they know what they want, and our job as adults becomes really making sure that we are able to meet their needs and what they would like to do in their future. So I am inspired every time I meet with the students. If nothing else is going right when I talk to students, I know exactly where my North Star is, and they are it. At the end of this, I put together a really comprehensive report. It will have all of our glows, and it will also have all of our grows. I leave no stone unturned. It will be riddled with data. This is starting to get nervous. Sorry. It would also include some snippets of conversations from my focus group, so that you actually have actual direct quotes directly from participants, both parents, faculty, and students. And then the ultimate goal is to work collectively with the body provided from the district to create or revise the action plan that we have for equity, to make sure that we bring this to life. So it's not just what we say, but it's what we do, and that we practice that. So any questions? I hesitate to ask, but
Hi.
hey.
I actually had a question. I went through this, and I'm so actually happy to hear from you, because I don't think that I've actually had that chance to connect with you, and I apologize for that. I've tried a little bit at the end of things, and I think you kind of aren't really sure about me, and that's fine. I think we could be friends, though. I think you and I would get along really, really well, actually. But anyway, but I would really like to know, what do you think, in your own words, would be the challenge that you see in Naugatuck, being in this position? Like, what you think your largest problem is, and how are you attacking that? And how is Naugatuck and our kids and our staff doing with that challenge right now?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. Walking in amidst a pandemic, and I know people hate hearing it, but it's an undeniable.
We're tired of it.
I know you are. Listen, and so am I. But unfortunately, I think we are underestimating the effects that this pandemic has had on children. We went from kids having routine, structure, spending every single day, all day in schools with teachers, being guided. And we all know that kids may say that they hate structure, but the reality is they love it and they need it. And so we went from students having that to that being pulled away. And then because of the disparities, we don't know what experience every single kid had, right? So some children became pseudo parents. Some students, were left at home alone. Some students' Wi-Fi wasn't working. So every single child experienced that in a very different way. And I think it's really, one of the things that we really have to remember to do is do perspective taking, because what happened in your household and in our own households is not what happened in the households of children. And I think more than ever, what I saw through this pandemic is teachers actually really having a real live look into the lives of their students for the first time. And it was shocking. When I was a building principal, the stories that my staff were telling me and the heartbreak that they had because they did not know, 8 people in a family living in one room, and they're all trying to be on 5 of them are kids, and they're on a device, all trying to have school at the same time. So to be honest, right now, which is why I'm so determined to have data before I make any judgments. I'll be honest, I'm a planner. I very well could have and probably did, before I realized it wasn't a good idea and then threw it out, would have walked into this district with a plan in place on what we should do to make things better. Because that's just kind of my personality. I want to fix. I want to use what I know to drive improvement. I very quickly realized that is presumptuous of me, and not in keeping with the trust that the public has given me to find out before we make a plan for how to fix it, right? And so, what I'm experiencing most of when I talk to people really is I can't tease out what is pandemic and what has been here before, because there is no before for me. There's before for me as a parent, but that's not the same thing as being a staff person working within the school system. If I can make a plug for one thing, sorry, Chris. Here's what I do know for a fact. We are asking a lot of our educators. We are asking a lot from our educators. And one thing that I did find that to me is alarming, and should probably be looked at, is how much time you're giving educators to be professionals, which all professionals get professional development and spend time learning their craft. It's hard. I've run a building, I've changed a building, I've lifted a building from the lowest performing in our district to the highest performing in our district. It took time. Every PD day that the district had was gifted to me to do what I need to do for my staff. And we worked on that craft. And if educators don't have time to learn their craft, that is a problem, right? And so if you wanted one thing that I would offer as something to be considered, without Chris getting upset with me, is I think that your educators need the time and the respective professionals to learn to be able to get better at their craft. Professional development, it cannot be understated how important that time is, so that when they are in the room with students, every moment matters and counts, and is strategic. So that would be the one thing I would hand. Sorry. Yes.
I thank you very much. And
Yes.
also, I was actually one of those people that had 4 different grades going on at the same time in my household. And I had a kindergartner, so
Oh.
I totally understand exactly what that struggle is. All the kindergartner all the way up to high schooler, so I understand that
Torture.
challenge.
For sure. No problem. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. I'm running.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rangel.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Teresa.
And Mrs. Cooney is going to share with the board a memo. Well, I guess she already did share in board docs. I don't know if there's any questions. Yeah. We are hoping to go ahead tomorrow. We have not gone ahead, Mr. McCool.
Have you compared this company to the other numerous out there for cost and what they do? AFP, Civic Plus, School Messenger, School Point.
Lorraine has done extensive research on all of those websites for how many years, Lorraine? 4 years. And so we have an opportunity right now to move forward with Final Site, which through that research, we determined was a much more accessible and user-friendly platform for our family and our community members.
But no comparison for cost or price on the other ones?
We compared cost and price. We could share that with you. I don't have it here. But we could get that to you.
I was just wondering.
Sure.
I looked at 9 other school districts' websites that use all of those. Waterbury and Amity both use Final Site,
Mhm.
which is, they look fine. Watertown, Lebanon, and Milford use Apathy, which I liked the user interface of. I was just wondering.
So our website looks as amazing as it does right now, really because of Lorraine and her ability to present it the way that it does. I would argue that it is only as beautiful as it is because of the person behind it. And so I do rely on her, and we meet regularly, and she's really been wanting to switch to Final Site for some time, I think long before I was in this position. And so I shared all the benefits with you that are highlighted in this memo. And I don't know if you have anything you would want to add to that, Lorraine.
Yeah, when I first came to the district 4 years ago, it was right when we were switching to our current website from the previous one. And at that time, I did a lot of research on all different websites. I have a folder of like 100 different school websites that I have on my desktop and comparing them. And like from that point, I was like, every website that I loved was Final Site, I noticed. And at that time, Final Site was more expensive, a lot more expensive than the one we went with, which was Edlia, which is what we have now. Since then, they've come down in price a lot, and I've spent the last year negotiating with them to bring their price down even more. So it's actually the yearly cost of it is there's an upfront fee for this year to get it set up, but after that, the yearly cost is actually less than what we're paying for our website now, and it has a lot more functionality to be able to. I really would like to develop like specific sections of the website to have more usability and look nicer to have, like, for example, our HR section of the website. I'd like to have, I have a vision of I have a video that I'm working now to help recruit new staff members, to highlight some of the aspects of our school, why people would want to come to work here, and make it more welcoming. Also, our enrollment page, I've been trying to work within the confines of our current website to make it as best I can, but I love to have more information for new families. that's easily accessible and presented in an appealing way.
Thank you. I noticed earlier this year, all the updates you did to the website, you did a really good job bringing that. Thank you for the work you did.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll then move into our monthly reports, starting with our student reps report, and I will turn it over to Tenzin and Josephine.
Hello? Oh, okay. Sorry. So students have continued with course selection process and are meeting individually with their counselors to review and finalize their schedules for the 2022 to 2023 school year. And last month, the Student Equity Forum was a success. So each social justice group within the school shared their current and upcoming projects and have begun discussing a collaborative project. We hope to have updates from them at the March meeting. And the NHS Black Student Union led a celebration of Black History Month and Black Excellence by honoring Black figures each morning on the announcements. Similarly, the Young Feminist Club is celebrating Women's History Month by sharing prominent and influential women and their accomplishments over announcements.
I have some updates from our school liaison. So first we have Hillside School. The liaison is William Zhang for Hillside. And some updates from Hillside are that students are asking to enrich their school days with social activities before and during school. And they have noticed and appreciated their teachers' efforts to make that happen with enrichment activities and kind of school spirit, such as Color Wars, which they participated in the last couple of weeks. But students are generally wanting more opportunities to move around through the day, but they have noticed their teachers and administrators putting in effort for that and have enjoyed it. From Cross Street School, from Angelina Pyers, we have an update. From last month, I brought up some of the fundraising that the students at Cross Street have been doing. And the Penny Wars competition they did raised $500, and they split up the funds evenly between St. Vincent's Homeless Shelter and the Naugatuck Animal Shelter, so that was really good. Breeze the service dog has been visiting the 5th and 6th grade students and has been promoting social emotional wellness at school. I believe the dog has been meeting with the 5th graders for longer and has recently started meeting with the 6th graders, but the feedback from the students with that has been really positive. And then finally, the Cross Street Leadership Committee has been working to establish student-led clubs as a way to meet with peers that have similar interests. And what I heard from Angelina is that there were several suggestions for student-led clubs, one of which being an environmental justice group. So all of that seems really great from Cross Street. And finally, from City Hill, we have an update from Matt Davey and Jody St. Paul. With the mask being lifted for the past few weeks, students are feeling less worried about their peers being maskless as they did when the mask mandate was first lifted. They don't see any issue with the optional mask policy, so they're feeling more comfortable with that. And in terms of extracurricular, students would like to add a football team. With the success of the football team in the NVL this past year, they would like to see a football team added at the middle school to make the transition from youth football to high school football more smooth. And finally, students seem interested in having designated honors and academic classes, in addition to the resource classes that are offered to them currently, that offer them that enrichment opportunity. But they're looking forward and hoping to have that kind of distinction in their classes. Thank you.
Thank you, Tenzin and Josephine. I just want to say I was able to attend the Equity Forum last month, and it was great to see what the different groups are doing. So we will then move on to the facility use report. Are there any questions on the facility use report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Human Resources Report. Are there any questions on the Human Resources Report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Enrollment Report. Any questions on the Enrollment Report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Finance Report. Are there any questions on the Finance Report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Fire Drill Report. Any questions on the Fire Drill Report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the field trip. And I'd like to ask, we approve this, right? Yeah. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the field trip request for DECA.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Scully. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Ms. Makowski. Any discussion?
I just have one question. They make mention at the bottom of the form that the prices may change depending upon how many chaperones they have. So we don't need to approve the new chaperones, right? So that'll be up to the principal. Okay. Just want to clear that up.
And there's a 2-to-6 ratio, so they have a good ratio, so it's not like
Right.
it's right.
Well,
needed.
it's only because she had mentioned it at
Yes,
the bottom. So
agreed. I
I just
saw that
wanted to
too.
make
Yeah.
sure.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Ms. O'Donnell abstains. That motion passes. We'll then move on to old business. Policy 1335, green cleaning. Could I have a motion to approve policy 1335, green cleaning?
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Grant. Do we have a second? And a second by Mr. Scully. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. We'll then move on to new business, the Head Start grant approval.
Mr. Risk, you can stay there and see if there's any questions. Yeah. If there's, yeah.
Could I have a motion to approve the Head Start grant as presented? We have a motion by Ms. Malone. Do we have a second? And a second by Ms. O'Donnell. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. We'll then move on to the 2022-2023 budget proposal. Could I have a motion to approve the superintendent's proposed budget and adopt it as the Board of Education budget for the 2022-2023 school year? We have a motion by Ms. O'Donnell. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Ms. Grant. Any discussion? Thank you. Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes with Mr. McCool voting no. And I just want to take a second to, thank everyone that's involved in the budget process. It's not an easy process, and it's still not over yet. It still gets presented to the town. which will be on March 28th. But thank you, everyone, Bernice, Chris, Melissa, all the administration. They do a great job in preparing us for this. We'll then move on to our policy revisions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there are several new policies for first reads that we're introducing to you today. The first of which you recently updated, confidentiality and access to education records. It's really just a technical edit. They changed the name of the Student Privacy Policy Office. Well, no, that's what it was changed to. It was formerly the Family Policy Compliance Office. So there's minimal changes there. In 5300, we're revising this policy to allow for the administration of naloxone, which is Narcan. And that's what we would use in the event and to provide emergency first aid to students who experience a known or suspected opioid overdose. I had a conversation with the chair separately of fast tracking this to skip the first read, but we're still acquiring the product and doing the training. And since our April meeting happens to be a week earlier, given the April break, it actually lines up nicely. Our plan is to be ready. We're training nurses during parent conferences, which are at the end of March. So that is that policy. I'm just going to go through the explanations and then stop for questions on any of them. They did go through the policy committee. The next policy is Administrative Regulations 5320R. It's revising the health assessment screenings, administrative regulations to conform with Public Act 2195 regarding the implementation of vision screenings and the requirements for reporting children with a diagnosis of asthma. Under the new law, districts must report on a triennial basis the total number of children that have a diagnosis of asthma at the time of enrollment in grade 6 or 7 and 9 or 10. So we're in compliance with that, and this is the policy to be in compliance with the law. And the next, policy 5320R, it's the administrative regulations associated with immunizations. This we really talked about last year, essentially, but the policy is lagging behind the law. We're in compliance with the law. This is about Public Act 216 to conform with that, which revised the religious exemption for immunization requirements for school attendance. So this was last year public comment. I believe it was last year. Time is a blur. But it's April. It's in the April 28th. So it's codified in the law and in our policy. We were in compliance. Now our policy is brought up to date to be in line with that. So I'll pause if there's any questions. It's the first read. We also have time before we vote on next time too, if you don't think of something and want to let me know or email me.
Any questions? Like the superintendent said, these are first reads, so we will vote on them next meeting. That brings us to the approval of the minutes. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting? We have a motion by Mr. McCool. Do we have a second? Second. And a second by Ms. Makowski. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. We'll then move into communications, the water bottle filler grant.
Yeah, we have another grant. Thank you, Mrs. Risk. Another grant for another 3 water bottle fillers, which we'll be installing. No, all schools had them. If we didn't get a grant, we purchased them. And we'll be doing more actually over the course. Really, the goal is to replace all of our water fountains over time with the water bottle fillers. It's much better. Most kids bring their water bottle, fill it up. It's more sanitary. It's not like when I was a kid, the whole soccer team or baseball team were drinking out of the same jug or drinking out of a hose or whatever. It's one of our players drank out of the river, that was not smart.
That's awesome. We'll then move into board communications. Does anyone have any board communications?
No, I don't really have any specific. I know I'm terrible with that. The team spirit, the parents rooting them on. I didn't make any of the events, but I did follow. And it just made you feel really wonderful that the kids had that enthusiasm and that team spirit and community and let's do this. So congratulations.
Yes, I totally echo those comments. So my only communications would be, recently, someone in the Naugatuck Public Schools family in the administration, Nicole Reichart, lost her husband this past weekend. So I'd like to take a moment of silence and ask that we all keep Nicole and her family in our prayers. So if we could all just take a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll then move into adjournment.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Marilyn and a second by Ms. Malone. All those in favor? Any opposed? We're adjourned.